Welcome to the testing lab. Today, we are doing a complete, unfiltered, deep dive audit of the Cambridge Assessment mark scheme. Our mission? To completely bridge that incredibly frustrating gap between a B and an A star in AS and A-level mathematics, 9709. We're specifically zeroing in on one of the absolute trickiest sections out there, 5-3 probability, taking a really close look at exclusive and independent events. So let's fire this up and get started. Look at this quote right here. A senior examiner recently noted that the difference between a B and an A star in mathematics often comes down to exactly how well you understand 5.3 probability. And look, we aren't just guessing or throwing out random tips here. We're actively using raw, official examiner data to completely bust the viral study myths surrounding exclusive and independent events. Because let's be real, a lot of students think they can just memorize a handful of formulas, watch a 30-second shortcut video online, and scrape by. But the principal examiner reports? Yeah, they tell a vastly different story. Let's find out why those shortcuts actually destroy your grade. So why exactly do students find multi-stage analysis and method marks so incredibly hard? Honestly, it's the central mystery of the 9709 paper. You know the feeling, right? You flip the page, you see this massive, complex, high-tariff past paper question, and your brain just completely freezes. But here is the thing. The problem isn't that you don't know the math. Not at all. The problem is how you've been taught to approach the exam paper itself. Today, we are going to completely dismantle the common pitfalls and those fake social media revision shortcuts that are actively, literally sabotaging your marks right there in the exam room. Okay, here is our roadmap for today's session. Number 1, closing the grade gap. Number 2, core probability principles. 3, the procedural framework. 4, top examiner warnings. And finally, number 5, the final audit. We have a ton of crucial ground to cover, so let's jump right into our very first diagnostic test. Section 1, closing the grade gap. Let's bust our first myth. So think about the number 3. This is absolutely crucial. Myth number 1 that we see everywhere online is this idea that if you just write more pages and dump literally every formula you have ever memorized onto the paper, you'll automatically get more marks. Completely busted. Unstructured, generic formula dumping actually triggers an immediate marking penalty on the examiner's grid. Why? Because the Cambridge Assessment Framework targets exactly 3 distinct cognitive domains: knowledge and understanding, application, and analysis. Imagine a student, let's call him Tester Alex. Alex thinks writing huge blocks of Math Dragon will save him. He might barely hit knowledge, but he completely zeroes out on application and analysis. Examiners demand a highly specific structural physics to your writing. You have to actively prove you can apply the data to the very specific context of the prompt, not just spit out what you memorized. Moving on to Section 2, core probability principles. Now that we know superficial page dumping is a total myth, we have to understand what the syllabus is actually demanding from you. It all boils down to this concept: connected conceptual understanding. Basically, this is your ability to transfer your mastery of fundamental principles into completely, totally unfamiliar contexts. Cambridge prioritizes analytical depth over just scratching the surface. If they give you a scenario about manufacturing defects on paper 1, and the very next year it's about shifting weather patterns, you have to apply the exact same logical, structured reasoning to both. You have to know, without a shadow of a doubt, precisely when events cannot happen at the same time, meaning they are mutually exclusive and their intersection is 0, versus when one event doesn't affect the other at all, meaning they are independent and their probabilities just multiply. You can't fake that understanding. All right, Section 3, the procedural framework. We are replacing those bad revision assumptions right now. We are building a bulletproof structural strategy with this unstoppable 5-step workflow for 5-3 questions. Think of another type of student. Let's call her Tester Sam. Sam writes super fast, uses massive vocabulary, but totally ignores the actual command word of the prompt. Don't be Sam. Instead, follow this protocol. Step 1, deconstruct the question and find that exact command word. Step 2, extract the relevant data from the texts or tables. Step 3, select the analytical framework. Ask yourself immediately, am I dealing with exclusive or independent events here? Step 4, execute with perfectly clear notation. And Step 5, present your final answer using the correct terminology. This right here is the actual physical reality of how to tackle these questions step by step. It's a game changer. And that workflow leads us straight to the golden rule, the method mark strategy. Look, marks are awarded for the process, not just the final number. This is where so many students lose out. Let's say you try to do everything in your head, act like a human calculator, and just write down the final probability. If you make one tiny arithmetic error, boom, you score 0. But if you write down every single step of the process using the correct probability notation, like following a solid point, evidence, explanation, link, or peel structure, then even if you mess up the final calculation, the examiner is forced to award you partial or even full credit for the method. A flawless process guarantees marks, even on the most stressful, high-tariff questions. Which brings us to Section 4, Top Examiner Warnings. But hey, system pause. Before we blast away the biggest exam lie of the century and show you what actually wins marks, secure your academic defense network. Subscribe to Ace the Exams right now and turn on all notifications. Seriously, whether you're tackling Cambridge IGCSE, O-levels, AS, or A-levels, don't let bad study advice compromise your final results. Okay, let's expose the exact points where student logic totally breaks down. I want you to look at these top 4 mistakes. These were identified directly by the people actually grading your papers, pulled straight from the examiner reports. Number 1, answers are just way too vague. Number 2, format and presentation are completely ignored. 3, responses lack the specific context given in the prompt. And 4, this is the absolute ultimate red flag. Key terminology is confused. Specifically, the examiner alert states that candidates consistently, year after year, confuse the terms exclusive and independent. Honestly, this is where marks go to die. If you mix these two up, your entire structural physics for the answer completely collapses. Let's run a quick interactive stress test right now. Spot the fake shortcut. On one side, we have a myth-based answer. It relies on a pre-written generic template, throws in some jargon, but completely lacks mathematical definitions. If you write this, it shatters under examiner's stress testing. On the other side, we have the examiner-approved answer. It explicitly defines its terms right out of the gate. It literally states, because these events are mutually exclusive, the probability of their intersection is equal to 0, and it ties that math directly to the context of the question. Do you see the difference? You must always define your terms before using them in any extended response. And when you're asked to compare datasets or probability outcomes, you need a critical analysis framework to survive the mark scheme parameters. You can't just list facts. You have to actively evaluate. You need to identify similarities and differences. You must use comparative connectives to link your thoughts. You have to support every single comparison with hard evidence, like explicitly proving mathematical independence using the multiplication rule. And finally, you draw justified evaluative conclusions. Doing this takes your response from just being merely descriptive, straight through to analytical, and all the way up to being evaluatively bulletproof. All right, we made it to Section 5, the final audit. Let's lock this down. Welcome to the data matrix sweep. To score those absolute top-tier marks, your evaluation of the evidence requires you to identify 4 specific pillars. Ask yourself, what is the limitation of the data provided? What assumption is the question making? Is there an alternative interpretation, like, hey, could these events actually be independent instead of exclusive based on some hidden variable? And finally, what is the actual effect on the conclusion? Applying this exact matrix in your head is an absolute must for high-scoring probability answers. It proves to the examiner that your analytical depth is completely unmatched. Now, all of this is great, but how do you actually remember it under the intense pressure of a ticking clock? Here is a quick memory hack. Use a visual story method to encode these concepts so you never mix them up again. For exclusive, picture 2 physical rooms with a heavily locked door between them. You absolutely physically cannot be in both rooms at the exact same time, which means the probability of their intersection is exactly 0. For independent, picture 2 people flipping coins in completely different cities. One person's result has absolutely 0 effect on the other person, so their probabilities just simply multiply together. This visual encoding stops you from panicking and permanently distinguishes the 2 terms in your brain. The myth status bar is officially flashing busted for those fake shortcuts, and the structured method is confirmed. I want to leave you with this final provocative question. Which online study myth will you drop before your next past paper practice? Remember the 3 universal truths we proved today. Always run a command word scan, strictly use the method mark strategy, and constantly audit your definitions. Make sure to subscribe to Ace the Exams, click the notification bell for more weekly myth-busting sessions, and drop a comment below sharing the absolute weirdest exam hack you've ever seen online so we can test it in the lab next time. See you then.